I didn't expect time to move this fast. Last time I checked, it was the end of December 2019. Now, it's already the end of January 2023. Anyway, I hope your first month of 2023 was great. As always, today we're gonna look back at what happened in the Indo-Pacific region in January 2023. What stories do we have this month? Without further ado, let's jump into the video. We're gonna start today's video with a story from the South China Sea. In mid-January, the Indonesian Navy deployed their warships to the North Natuna Sea, the Indonesian part of the South China Sea, to monitor a Chinese Coast Guard cutter that has been active in this area since late December. A warship, an MPA aircraft, and a drone have been deployed to monitor the Chinese vessel, said the Indonesian Navy Chief of Staff. He also added that the Chinese vessel has not conducted any suspicious activities. However, the Navy needed to monitor it as he had been in Indonesia's EEZ for some time. Cited from Reuters, ship tracking data shows the China Coast Guard cutter CCG-5901 has been sailing in the North Natuna Sea, particularly near Indonesia's Tuna Block gas field and Vietnam's Chim Sao oil and gas field since 30 December 2022. But retreat 2 weeks later after the US Nimitz Carrier Strike Group was seen moving towards Vanguard Bank from Singapore, and the Indonesian Navy and Coast Guard also sent their ship into the area. The presence most likely to be China's assertiveness to Indonesia and Vietnam after both countries concluded an agreement on the boundaries of their EEZ in the SCS. Even though UNCLOS said passing through someone's EEZ is allowed, we must not let foreign ships stay in our waters for too long, especially if they are sailing too close to our vital infrastructure like the Tuna Block gas field. This gas field will bring billions of dollars to Indonesia's economy, and geopolitically, it will change the dynamics in the region. Due to its location, it will undermine China's 9-dash line claim over the South China Sea, and I'm pretty sure they don't like that, and will do everything they can to stop it. So we must protect this asset from any possible harassment and sabotage, because I'm afraid it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Able to detect and locate foreign vessels that enter our waters alone is not enough. We also need a constant presence by our military, particularly the Navy. More OPVs are certainly needed there, supported by MPAs and drones. Moreover, underwater sensors that can detect small UUV are also important to prevent any infiltration and sabotage to our gas field. Additionally, the government must invest more to build up our Coast Guard so that they are able to counter their Chinese counterpart. Adding more ocean-going cutters, air assets, drones, and more importantly, personnel who will operate this equipment must be a priority. Moving on to the second story, a new milestone was made for the Korean homegrown fighter jet, the KF-21. On 17 January, the prototype number 1 took off for its first ever supersonic test, breaking the sound barrier at an altitude of 40,000 feet. According to the Defense Acquisition Program Administration or DAPA, the supersonic test flight has two important implications in terms of the R&D of the aircraft. First, the flight confirmed that the KF-21 has structural stability at supersonic speed, and the other achievement is that the KF-21 has become the first domestically developed aircraft to reach supersonic speeds. KAI plans to conduct more intensive test flights at higher altitude and a faster speed to thoroughly examine and verify its flight stability at supersonic speed. Until 2026, KAI will conduct approximately 2,200 test flights with 6 KF-21 flyable prototypes, and they aim to deliver 120 aircraft to the Republic of Korea Air Force by 2032. From what I see, it looks like the KF-21 program is progressing smoothly. One by one, the prototypes are coming out of the hangar, and no incident was reported so far. For a modern fighter jet, the ability to fly at supersonic speed has become a standard, and I'm happy that the KF-21 has passed this test. It's not over yet, but it must be celebrated nonetheless. Meanwhile, from the Indonesian side of the program, I still don't have any update regarding Indonesia's payment for the KF-21 program. But in December 2022, it was reported that the infrastructure for the KF-21 at the Indonesian Aerospace is ready. This includes labs, production facility, hangar, shelter, and apron. And 2 Indonesian pilots have also been prepared to fly it this year. In several flight tests, both pilots have been directly involved as a chaser flying the FF-50. Next, we have a story from Australia. On 18 January, the Australian government confirmed that they will be procuring 40 UH-60M Black Hawk from the US with an estimated cost of 2.8 billion Australian dollar or 1.95 billion US dollar. The Black Hawk is expected to be delivered this year. Cited from Asia Pacific Defense Journal, the new helicopters will replace the troubled MRH-90 Taipan of the Australian Army, which has been struggling with maintenance and spare part supply issues for several years. According to the Australian Army Head of Land Capability, the Black Hawk will meet Australia's strategic needs and is considered a more reliable and proven system supported by a robust supply chain. The Black Hawk will be used for combat and also peacetime operations, including protection of Australia's sovereignty, deployment of troops, and HADR. The Australian Army currently has 41 Taipan helicopters, but the maintenance issue forced them to hire civilian helicopters in 2021, costing 37 million Australian dollar to maintain their capability while they dealt with Taipan's long-running problems. And the Australian Department of Defense also confirmed back in 2021 that they intend to retire the helicopters by late 2024, 13 years earlier than planned. I guess I have to say goodbye to my favorite helicopter, because probably I couldn't see it fly again in the next decade. The NH-90 had been diagnosed with problems for years, and Australia is not the only one who experienced it. Many European countries who purchase it are also disappointed with the helicopter. Sweden, Finland plan to retire it too, and even Norway wants to return it and seek a refund from the manufacturer. We're gonna end today's video with a story from Canada. In early January, Canada is reported buying 88 F-35A in a 19 billion Canadian dollar or 14.2 billion US dollar contract. This is to replace their aging CF-18 fighter aircraft, some of which are more than 40 years old. The first aircraft are expected to enter service in 2026, with the full fleet being operational by 2033 or 2034. With this deal, Canada becomes the last of the F-35 program's original 8 partners to acquire the aircraft. The Canadian Defense Minister said that the purchase could contribute over 425 million Canadian dollar annually to the Canadian economy. Even though they are not operating the jet yet, Canadian industry has seen $2.8 billion in contracts to date related to the construction of the F-35. The F-35 was once a sole source replacement of the CF-18 a decade ago, but administration change, rule change for the procurement process, and the pandemic delayed the plan. The current administration was initially against buying the F-35 due to cost, then held a competitive process with Lockheed Martin, Saab, and Boeing as participants. But some critics and advocates said that this competition was a waste of time, since the F-35 is more advanced than the other competitor, and it's inevitable that Canada would eventually buy the aircraft. If money is not an issue, the relation with the country of origin is good, and I'm allowed to buy the F-35, of course I will choose the F-35 too. I mean, it's not even a fair competition. One is a 5th-gen fighter jet with stealth capability, and the others are not. Of course, the F-35 is more expensive to buy and has a higher operating cost. But in this day and age, everyone wants a future-proof platform. And the F-35 is currently the only one that can offer that in the Western market. That's it for today. What happened in the Indo-Pacific region in January 2023? What do you think about these stories? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching everyone. I'll see you in the next one.